Welcome to Soar Higher with Jason Ballard, a podcast developed for leaders by leaders to inspire you to reach your highest altitude possible by providing proven strategies, resources, and expert advice to accelerate your personal and professional success beyond what you thought was possible. Hey, I'm Joel Weiland, and I'm joined in the studio today by your host, Jason Ballard, and today we're going to be talking about developing a winning culture in your workplace. Welcome to the show, Jason. How you doing today, man?
I'm awesome, Joel, as usual. How are you, my friend?
I am doing very well. It's a beautiful spring day. The Ohio River Valley is only completely wrecking my nasal cavities with my usual 3 months worth of allergies. But other than that, and the tears that you'll probably see coming off my face, I'm doing pretty well, man. I'm doing pretty well. Do you have allergies?
I used to,
Yeah?
but weird thing is, when I moved here, allergies went away.
Really?
My wife and kids didn't have allergies before.
That's really
They started getting
interesting.
allergies. It's weird. I don't know what's going on, but no, I'm good right now. I don't have allergies.
Man, that's great, brother. I envy you just a little bit. My goodness. Well, friends, we're coming off an episode talking about just the top reasons why people leave their jobs, why they quit, why they walk away from vocations and careers that they may have even had for years and years and years. And there were very good reasons we discussed why people leave, ranging from leadership to culture. And today we want to talk about kind of the inverse, the positive antithesis of our last episode, which is developing and creating a winning culture in your workspace. So whether or not you're a leader, whether or not you can just recognize as an employee the benefits and the importance of a winning culture, there are many things for us to discuss and work through. And the first thing that we want to do is just define what a winning culture actually is. A lot of people know that word, obviously, and they can agree with the statement, and people talking around their workplace saying, it's just a bad culture around here. But I think a lot of people don't really know what that means. So we want to strive towards a definition. So Mr. Jason, tell us what a winning culture at the workplace really is.
Yeah, Joel, thanks, man. So when you think about a culture, I mean, it's interesting. You go on and you talk to different business leaders, even employees in companies, and they talk about, the good, the bad, the ugly that's going on in their world and where they are in that mix. And you're like, well, what's the culture like? What are the conditions? What do you need to be successful? And everybody's got a different definition of culture and what that means and what that involves. It's not a simple answer. It's actually, culture is kind of like fabric. It's just woven into all of the different parts of an organization that create the organization. The color on the walls to the people and the uniforms and the logos. I mean, it's everything contributes to the culture. And so, to be clearly, to get everyone on the same page about what culture really is, it's an inclusive environment of shared values, beliefs, behaviors that connect everybody together around common objectives of the entire organization. People, processes, systems, all of those things working in harmony, ideally, to achieve common goals and objectives.
Man, that's great. Just say that again for our listeners because that was almost poetry that you just spit out right there. Say that again. What is the definition of a winning culture?
A winning culture, Joel, is about very simple things. It's about an inclusive environment that involves everybody from all walks of life. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, or what you're doing. It's about shared values, principles that ground each other together. It's about beliefs and behaviors of what's acceptable and what's not, and what needs to happen to get people to work together in a synergetic way, regardless of anything that may be a potential barrier that connects everybody together. Again, it's that fabric that interweaves. It's the connecting tissue in our bodies that connects the bones and the ligaments and the muscles, and it's that thing that binds and creates individuals into one.
Man, Man, that's great. And just kind of hearkening back to what we were talking about last time, with just the reason why people quit their job. Obviously, culture is important, just in that it helps with your employee retention. Your people are going to stick around longer if they're if they're striving towards a common goal. Around common principles, and then hopefully they like each other, for the most part along the way, which is absolutely something that can be controlled, whether it's unfortunately, letting go of people that may cause problems, because unfortunately that's a real reality. But I think a lot of it can be fixed before then, and you can just bring people and rally people around a common enterprise, something for all of them to strive for, that is ultimately set by the leadership of the company.
Yeah. Well, as we talked last time on the previous episode, the top 3 reasons why people leave, why people are challenged in the workforce today is, a challenge with the leadership, a bad boss or a disconnected boss or an unengaged boss or a boss that doesn't listen or some issue with a leader, a boss, a supervisor. The second reason why people leave is the culture. They just either don't connect or they don't fit or they don't feel like they belong, or people, just mistreat them or for whatever. There's something culturally there where they don't feel connected. They don't feel empowered. They don't feel engaged. They're coming to work and doing the basic stuff and going home, and it's just a big capital JOB to them. It's not really something that they're really excited and passionate about. They're not aligned with the things that should be most important to them to get the best out of them and maximize their potential. And the third thing, in addition to leadership and culture, is people need to feel valued. They need to feel appreciated. Well, if the culture isn't set right to be inclusive, to be in a position to capitalize on everybody's God-given talents and maximize that for the betterment of the individual and the organization, you are going to create some friction that ultimately people will get disgruntled. They're going to feel like all their hard work and efforts aren't being recognized and appreciated and valued. And they don't feel like there's a future in the company. I can't grow. I can't move forward because I'm not grounded and engaged and empowered on a level I need to feel like, the company's pulling me along versus me trying to fight the company on every aspect.
Yeah, and I think people, even just coming out of the pandemic, need to realize how important their culture is at their work. I mean, we're going to talk pretty soon about benefits and just the importance that people need to put on taking care of their employees and the things that they offer them that might be a little bit outside the box. We hope to talk about that pretty soon. But culture is absolutely one of those things that makes all the difference in the world. It's not enough just to pay people a fair wage. It's not enough just to give them the same old benefits that they've been given, their entire career. It matters the environment in which they work. I've told a little bit of this story before, but I went through an acquisition in one of I think it was my first sales job. I went through and the company I worked for was bought out, and the culture of the company changed overnight. It went from this wonderful woman who was I guess it would be considered a small business. There were only about 70 of us in the greater Louisville area, but she ruled with an iron fist. But my goodness, that woman was fair, and she propped up those who succeeded, and she would give good, fair slaps on the wrist for those who didn't. And the company that took over was very much more concerned about their bottom line, even at the expense of the people that worked for them. So you saw people. I think I lasted longer than most, but a good probably 40% of the workforce turned over in the first 6 months, just because the culture, the environment that the people were working in changed by far for the worse. What are some other just examples that you've seen of the importance of work culture?
So when I think about culture, I'm reminded of a particular case study that happened a number of years ago. I want to say it was, 10, 15 years ago, if not a little longer, in the NFL. The Detroit Lions have had many years of frustration about not being a consistently, strong, winning football team in the NFL. And they've had some good people come and go, coaches come and go, and they just couldn't seem to get it right. And so some consultants came in, and they kind of gave the place a once-over. They looked at everything from facilities to logos to uniforms. I mean, they looked at everything, leadership, coaching, you name it. They did a top-to-bottom kind of inventory of the organization. And then conversely, went to a winning football team, a consistently winning, thriving football team. And that football team was the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, right? And then they did a compare and contrast between them. And here's a couple things that they found. One, the facilities were vastly different. What do I mean? In the Detroit Lions, they were kind of dingy. It was kind of dark, hadn't been as well maintained. The logos, the branding, just a lot of things that surround the facilities were just outdated and just kind of drabby and just worn down, and it's just like they haven't maintained that on a level that they needed to.
The lack of care.
Yeah. You go to the Dallas Cowboys and they got brand new locker rooms, new stadiums, new uniform. I mean, everything is just constantly new, constantly moving forward, constantly fresh and exciting, and there's just a lot of hope and energy, right? They even looked at things like in the locker room, the environment for which the players, dress and practice and rehearse and get together and strategize and look at playbooks and films, and how they go through their daily work was vastly different. There was just more positivity in and they're more focused to detail. There was just more discipline in the Dallas Cowboys regime than in the Detroit Lions. They looked at things like leadership, ownership, the level of engagement there, right? In some ways, the ownership was too involved, too engaged, too, calling too many shots all by themselves. And in some ways, they just lacked the support and the things that the people need, right? So when you think about the Detroit Lions, you're not talking about a coach, an owner, a coach, and some players. No, I mean, you're thinking about the stadium. You're thinking about the marketing of all of that, and people that work in the parking lots, the bathrooms, the people that are up and down the stairs that are selling the hot dogs and the beers. And, it takes a village to run a stadium and a football enterprise. I mean, it's not business. Yeah, it's a business. And that's a key point. They did not run the organization like a business. The Dallas Cowboys did.
Yeah.
You look at Jerry Jones and, they run a tight ship, but they spare no expense. They go all in, and they go after the right kind of talent. They do whatever it takes to bring in the right talent, train them. I mean, everything from, the cheerleaders to they were one of the first ones to do a mega, screen. It was almost the whole distance of the football field, a screen that you can see, no matter what seat you were in the stadium, the nosebleed section or on the 50-yard line, you had a great view of everything going on, camera angle. I mean, so the culture of these were vastly different. Another important piece was the energy.
Yeah.
The energy in the Cowboys was win and get better and constantly improve and just, moving forward. What needs to happen? Remove the barriers. In the Detroit Lions, they struggled with that energy and that positivity, and they just mindset-wise were just defeated year after year, play after play, game after game, and they just couldn't find some momentum and energy, and it was like a cloud that they couldn't break free from. And then they had a few good years. They had, they had guys like Matthew Stafford come on the team, and
Poor guy.
and Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders. I mean, they've had a lot of different talent, and they did level up. But the problem was those A-game players didn't have enough support and things around them to allow them to carry that momentum even farther. And so they just kind of hit a ceiling, and the organization's culture wasn't strong enough or good enough to propel them and maximize the potential of that team. I mean, it's great. Barry Sanders is one of the all-time great running backs in the NFL, but he's only as good as the line that he's got to, go through or go around to earn yards and run the ball down the field. They're only as good as the defense. If the offense never gets a chance to play and they're always on defense, then, Barry Sanders can be the greatest guy in the world. Matthew Stafford could be the greatest guy in the world and still end up with negative results, right? So you take a guy like Matthew Stafford, right? He did a great job on the Detroit Lions, right? And he leveled that team up, and he was a great inspirational guy, but he just couldn't take the team any farther, right? And so then he goes to the Rams. Very quickly, what happened? They go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
One guy, different team, Super Bowl. I'm going to give you another example. Tom Brady did a great job at the Patriots. They had a great chemistry, a great culture, and everybody was focused on those common goals and objectives, and everybody knew what they needed to do, and they executed year after year, and they were always top contenders, right? Tom Brady leaves, goes to the Tampa Bay Bucks, who are struggling significantly, and takes them to the Super Bowl and wins.
Yeah.
Coincidence? No. Right? It's about talent and skill and expertise and the right people with the right energy and the right leadership being packaged together with the right culture around them. He came there, added to that, but the Buccaneers also bolstered that culture and made changes that facilitated and empowered Gronk and Brady and all the stars on the Bucs to be and operate at their best. That's how, that's the difference between the different kind of cultures out there.
Yeah, and it seems that almost kind of gives a warning, I feel like, that even if you have an amazing sales force or a couple exceptional leaders or just a department that's killing it every quarter and you have a bad culture, you're still not going to succeed overall.
Yep.
Someone like Stafford, who was not able to succeed to reach his potential at the Lions, turns around and goes to the Super Bowl the moment that he leaves. And so if you have a killer sales force that's just slinging things all the time, and then you don't have the processes to turn what you're selling over and then give back to your customers, whoever it may be, whatever you're selling, the culture is going to, at the end of the day, be the thing that slows you down, whether it be good or bad. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of the times that we think of a culture at your place of work, we're almost thinking of negative things. And maybe that's a failure in just the overall aspects of how American business is done, but it seems like we focus on culture most when it's going wrong.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast, to have people be able to think about the positive aspects of the problems that they've usually seen in their workforce. So instead of thinking about only the reasons why people quit their jobs, let's start thinking about some ways that we can build a winning culture at your workplace as a leader, as an executive, as someone that is responsible for taking your success to the next level. So Jason, maybe walk us through a few ways in which we can just practically start building a winning culture at our workplace.
Yeah. You've got to think about culture as being proactive, not reactive.
Oh, yeah.
The people that are struggling today are reactive. They're reacting to the market, reacting to COVID, reacting to whatever's going on. They're reacting, trying to do whatever it takes, take shortcuts, do whatever they need to do to try to keep their head above water. This is about being proactive. Culture is leadership in the organization as a whole, looking out and getting out in front of the organization itself and asking, who the heck are we? What do we want to be known for? What are the things that are most important to us and our values? What are the things that we're not going to do no matter what somebody wants us to do? What are the things that bind us together? How do we treat each other in good times? How do we treat each other, more importantly, in the tough, challenging times? When we're in the fight, when we're, undermanned and overworked and underpaid and all these things, how do we dig out of adversity? It all binds back to the culture, the values, and all those things, because most people are in an organization because they want to connect to something bigger than themselves that's important to them.
Yeah, and that sounds like a burden of leadership. That's not something that you would trust the entire workforce for defining for you. You got to define that as the leader of your company.
Leadership has to start that process. Leadership has to exemplify that and set the tone, set the example, and embody whatever those things are that make up their culture. They have to engage. They can't just dial it in. They have to be front and center. They have to be on the field, calling the plays and being in the game with the team. Culture is initiated and the boundaries and things are set by the leaders, but you also want to have the empowerment and the engagement of the employees to be able to contribute to that. You don't want this to be a downward, hey, here's our culture, open your mouth and here it comes, you swallow it, eat it, enjoy it, tastes good, doesn't it? No, you want to define that vision. You want to define what success looks like, and then it be inclusive to have the employees help shape that to where everybody's contributing and everybody's working together to move that culture forward, to achieve
ownership of
absolutely
that throughout the entire workforce. That's awesome. What are some just extremely practical ways that our listeners can start working on the building of their culture?
So, Joel, thinking about this podcast, thinking about the seriousness of this topic, people are hurting. They're struggling. It's not an easy time in our world today. It's not even just in our own country. It's in the world as we know it today. The economy's global. It's interconnected, interdependent. And things that happen in one part of the world impact people in other parts of the world. And people all around are trying to figure out, how the heck do we move forward? What are the new norms going to be? How do we define our culture going forward? What changes do we need to make? How do we need to, wrap around our employees? And what does the company even look like going forward? How big, how small, how loving, caring are we, or how crazy are we? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go with this thing? Everybody's struggling. A lot of leaders are losing a lot of sleep over this, and it's like being in the ring with, Rocky Balboa. They're just getting punched left and right, and they're on the ropes, and they're just struggling to keep up. So I've come up with 5 specific things you can do today to create a winning culture going forward. And so let's start with number 1. Number 1 is what I call identity. A culture has to have an identity. So when you think about your organization, what is the identity of our organization? What is the logo?
Yeah.
People connect to the logo, to the symbol that represents that company. Where did you even get that logo? What's the meaning and the purpose behind it? And what does it represent?
Yeah.
And does it represent what we want it to represent going forward? And a lot of companies are making some changes. I mean, heck, I just saw Walmart going through some branding changes and color schemes and just different things that they're doing to define their culture going forward, right?
I had a really wise friend tell me once that marketing is temporary, but branding is forever.
It is.
Yeah, that stuff is so important for your identity as a company.
Well, let's think about that. I'll give you 2 examples. When you think of, if I were to say, Joel, I'd like to serve you a dark soda, what do you think I'm going to serve you?
Oh, you're going to give me some delicious Coca-Cola,
Coca-Cola, right?
Nasty Pepsi.
Now, that could have been Pepsi. That could have been Mr. Pibb. That could have been Dr. That could have been a lot of different things. Why did you say Coca-Cola?
Oh, man, because they have such good ads. And I'm in marketing, so I'm a little bit biased to a good ad now and then. But yeah, no, honestly, it's just what came in front of mind. It's the first thing that popped in my head.
Yeah, right. It's because of the culture.
Yeah,
it's the brand. It's you. When people go to work for Coca-Cola, they understand what that means. I'll give you another example. There are a lot of different fast food organizations out there. There's Wendy's, there's Burger King, Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Why is the line longer at Chick-fil-A more times than none than at other fast food restaurants? Tell me.
Man, because their chicken is delicious and it always comes out perfectly well.
They are consistent with their recipe. They are consistent with their food and their food offerings, but it's deeper than that. Mm-hmm. It's the people. Yeah. It's the culture. They all wear nicer looking uniforms. They're very polished, very well trained, very well organized. You got lines wrapping around a Chick-fil-A restaurant, and you got people out there with mobile devices taking their orders, paying for things. But when you get up to the place to get your food, they never mess it up. Mm-hmm. It's done, it's organized, it works, and they say, oh, it's a pleasure to serve you today. People go because of how they're treated. They go out of their way. If you're inside, if you don't go through the drive-thru and you go inside the store and you order and you sit down at the table, they have people that bring the tray out for you. They'll set it down, give you everything. Is there anything else you need? How else can we serve you? It's our pleasure to serve you. It's the culture. People love the Chick-fil-A culture, and they like the brand. They like the cows flying through the air and the crazy eat more chicken and, all these, eat more this, that, or the other compared to beef and other things. And it's the culture. It's how they've, branded themselves. My teenage daughter was looking for a job, and she immediately went to Chick-fil-A before she went to any of the other, nothing against any of the other, franchise, fast food types of places. They're all good. They all offer their own thing. But Chick-fil-A has created a specific culture that's distinguishable.
Ain't that the truth? Man,
it's distinguishable.
I've had a lot of friends that have actually worked their way up, some even to almost store manager positions where they're traveling around opening up new stores for people. Yep. And what you were talking about just made me think of the intentionality of that identity. It starts from the very beginning where they say, hey, you better say my pleasure or else. That's something that they train into their people. This is part of who we are as a company. And then that goes all the way up to the top where I remember in the town that I grew up in, you just it was kind of funny, but you knew the owner of the store. He was always out on the floor, delivering your nuggets or asking how you were that day in the city that we're in now, Louisville. There's a guy that will always come up to our table if I got my kids there, and he'll whip out his harmonica and start playing his harmonica in the middle of a crowded chicken restaurant. So absolutely, the identity of your company builds a culture that not only your employees will see, but ultimately the people that you serve, whether you're a service company or a product company. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about Chick-fil-A is you can't own a franchise and be disconnected. You can't just buy it and put somebody in charge. And you have to be an involved, engaged franchise owner to some extent in the organization and be present, or they will not sell you that franchise. They operate in a very specific way, and it's about that brand, which is why everybody loves them. Their customer service is great. Everybody's friendly and will go out of their way to help you in any way possible. So you have a really good experience in their food store.
Man, culture starts with identity. You got to decide who you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was, the interesting thing about the military, and if you think about, people that have really good cultures, you think about, the Coca-Colas, the Kleenexes, they've got the logos and the brands and the identity. When I was in the military, one thing that really connected the military together was the patch. Every single unit, in the military has its own unique patch that connects back to their heritage and how they first got started and when they got started and all the men and women that served years before them, and that it means something to wear that patch on your uniform. It meant something, to go in and, when I remember in 2003 when we invaded Iraq, we were part of the first wave of people going in and a part of some special operations groups, and just the name of the group, Rangers, SEALs, when you start throwing those kind of identities into the mix, it just sets the tone. You're like, oh, these guys are serious. These are the tough, bad dudes that are all about business. They're all going to come in here. And so a lot of the enemy, people we faced didn't really put up a fight because they knew what was coming across the line. But it's the identity. I was in the U.S. Air Force for over 20 years, and they have 3 simple, very core values that are part of the identity. It's integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. It's do the right thing all the time. Always put your duty before your own personal, selfish needs. And it's whatever you do it to the best of your ability. It doesn't matter if it's sweeping the sidewalk or shooting a weapon or flying a plane. Do it with excellence. Those are the common core things that really bind, a culture and create the culture for everybody to connect with and feel part of that team. You're wearing the company shirt and the logos and the brand. You represent something bigger than yourself. One of the proudest times I've had in my life is when I walked through an airport and I had my uniform on going from point A to point B in my journeys. People went out of their way. I'd see them way over there, and I'm going this way, and they go out of their way to track me down and say, thanks for your service. I mean, the uniform meant something.
Yeah.
You stood for something. And so I would encourage you, if you don't have a strong brand, identity, values, principles, that you need to start there.
Yeah, beautiful. What else you got?
So number 2 is team. So what do I mean by team? The team has to connect. If you got all the values and all the things in number 1, great, but what are you going to do with it? So we're all connected. We all, want to work together and work hard. We're like-minded people that want to be successful, but people need, the company, the organization needs a vision. Where are we going? We've got a culture. We've come together. We've got parts and pieces in place, but if we're going nowhere, then the culture will unravel. You need a purpose. You need a vision of where are we going? What is the mission? What are we going to be doing? And why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What outcome, what result are we trying to get to? Whether you're providing peace and prosperity around the world, or you're delivering, drinks like Coca-Cola to Chick-fil-A's all around the world, or wherever, what is that purpose, that connects those people together? Once you have those established, you have now created the entities of a team that can start working together in a synergetic way that eliminates their own opinions, their own, biases, or their own whatever. They get in the way of working together. When you think about your company, think about it as like a boat, a canoe or something, where you get in, you get a team of people in the boat. Everybody's got to row the boat at the same pace, at the same frequency, and it's got to be harmonious, or you'll just go around in circles and go nowhere.
Yeah.
And so that vision, that mission, that purpose, and creates that team around the brand, around everything we talk about in the identity.
So it almost seems like where identity is like who we are as a company, as an organization, this is what we do.
Where are we going and what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Mm-hmm. absolutely.
Without that, you're just going to go round and round, and people aren't going to stick around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can't have just a bunch of mavericks that think that
Nope.
they want to define their position or their role under you. So as a leader, an executive, I feel like you've got to, one, be confident in who you are, and it's not going to be the exact picture of the company down the street. It's not a great goal to just try and copy other people.
Yeah.
It's okay to be independent, to be different. But then you got to know ultimately what you're doing. You have to have some level of self-confidence in this is who we are and this is what we do.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to number 3. So we've covered 2 really important things that have to be there, or you really won't go anywhere. You really won't have a culture at all to really even be talking about. And so number 3 is about focus. So what do we mean by focus? We're talking about the plan. What's our strategy? So if we've covered our identity and the things that our values and our principles in the first category of identity, and we've talked about the team and the mission, the vision, the purpose, all those kind of things, and the who, what, when. Now it's like, okay, great. So what's the plan? How are we going to add? That's the how part, right? Yeah. How are we actually going to do this? Who's going to do what? When are we going to do it? When do we need to do it? Mm-hmm. And so you need a plan. You need people to prioritize the plan. You need people to create goals and break that down all the way to the front lines level, so every single member of the team has a specific stake in the game. They have goals. They have their own metrics. They have their own responsibilities that are contributing to these broader things that all kind of funnel up together to create the end state of what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. Yeah. You have to have a plan, and everybody's got to be connected plan. Everybody needs to be clear on their specific role and responsibility, just like, a football team. We've talked about football here in this podcast. So everybody, if everybody played the same position on a football team and ran the same play, with the, in accordance with the next guy next to him, it would be disastrous. Everybody can't play linebacker, right? Everybody has a specific role on a football team, and they all have to do their jobs. When you think about football, you think about Nick Saban, Alabama Crimson Tide, right? What makes them a great team? It's their culture. Well, what's the culture? Discipline. Everybody doing their job. When they interview Nick Saban in various, interviews throughout a college football season, he goes back to everybody's got to do their job. Everybody's got to stay focused. Everybody's got to be disciplined. And if everybody does what they're supposed to do, we're going to win. Yeah. Right? Because they have a plan. Everybody knows the plan. It's written down. Everybody knows what the calls are, and they roll the plays in from the sideline, and they execute, and everybody knows what they're doing, and that's what makes a winning culture work. Yeah. You've got to be focused. You've got to be intentional. You've got to have those things in place. And so number 4 is support. You have to have support as a part of your culture. Yeah. Because if people are working hard and are striving towards the goals and are achieving the vision and are connected to the identity and all of these things, they're going to need things along the way to allow them to continue to stay focused and stay disciplined and move forward to the best of their ability. And so they need support. They need to be confident that they're going to work this week and they're going to get paid this week. They need to be confident that they have health care and they have, benefits or needs. Whatever they need is going to be taken care of in some form or fashion. They need support from the leadership to make decisions. They need support with money. They need to fund things or purchase things, or, they may need training or tools or familiarization with something new they've never done before, right? As you go through the journey, you're going to need that support. If you strip out their support and you only do number 1, 2, and 3, that's going to fall apart real quick, because people aren't going to feel, well, that's your money's not where your mouth is, and I'm just here just doing things because you're making it sound good, but you're not you're not cashing checks, your mouth is writing, and that undermines the culture and derails it.
Yeah, it seems like all of these things build off of each other. Obviously, the leadership is going to set the pace for, who they are, what they're doing, how they're going to get it done. But then if you don't actually support and bring along a workforce behind you that's going to be, one, taking ownership of your vision as the leader of your company, but then also supported and given the resources they need to be fulfilled in their job, for it not to be just something that they begrudgingly, hatefully, trek to work every day to make you money. That's not going to be a lasting culture and not going to be a lasting company.
Not at all. Under the category of support, there's a couple of very important pieces, especially right now in this time in our nation's history where we are, I'm going to call it in transition mode of recovering from a pandemic, recovering from a inflation and recession and, just a lot of different things going on that's complicating and making things very, very difficult for people in their personal and professional lives. Right now, people need to feel connected to something bigger. They need to feel they have a future, right? If there's a point where they don't feel supported, they don't feel as they don't have a future. They may love the logo, they may love, the vision, they may love the plan, they may love all these things we've talked about, but if they don't feel there's a future, they're just coming to work doing the same thing and just, going through those motions, and then they're not growing, they're not elevating, they're not maximizing their potential in that process, and they don't have the hope and the thoughts in their mind that, this is great. I want to continue to grow. Leaders have to recognize those talented people, and when they're ready to grow, when they're ready to mature, when they're ready to take on more responsibilities, they need to be developed and challenged. You have to keep people engaged by challenging them. I don't mean dumping a bunch of, useless work on them, but engage them in challenging things that will get them out of their comfort zones, that will give them increased responsibility in a phased manner where they can be set up for success as they go through that journey. That is critical. And giving people the flexibility to solve those problems and meet those needs and develop themselves and grow the teams around them in an adaptable, flexible manner that works best for them and their teams is vital. Vital.
Absolutely, man. I feel, and again, I know that I mentioned this before. We want to try and get someone in here to teach us about benefits, because that would just be a really apt way and thing for us to learn about in this just weird and new workforce culture that we've got going on around us today after coming out of the pandemic. But I feel like people, it's not so much that people have woken up to the realization that they deserve something that they haven't been given before. And it's not necessarily adversely that that there's these big, bad, wealthy business owners that have just been keeping all the money from their people. I think that there's a compromise in the middle where people have realized some true aspects of need, that the benefit programs, the support from their companies do need to be updated and refreshed. But also that requires a lot of buy-in and ownership from the workforce. There's talks all over the place now of like a 4-day work week. You and I have had some personal conversations about that. And it just requires a lot from numerous different angles. So, man, the benefits, the support that people get from their leadership, whether it be a massive company or a small company, is inevitably going to lead to a culture where people want to remain at and work hard for.
Yeah, we touched on some very important things there. What leads us to number 5, the fifth and final piece, that if you do these things and you do them well, you will create an airtight culture where people are going to be attracted to you. You don't have to track them down and beg them and plead and, arm wrestle somebody to come to work for you. You're not going to have challenges of retaining them and convincing them to stay and throwing a bunch of money at them just to, please them, because most people don't leave because of money. We've already discussed why they leave. It's number 5, leadership.
Ooh. Every time.
Leadership. Leaders are the nucleus of the culture. They're not the entire culture. They're the heart and soul, the nucleus of the culture, because they are the decision makers. They are the ones that understand the broader aspects of the company and what's going on in the market more than anybody else in the company. Most people are in the company and they're focused on, their daily work and their team and their projects and the things that they're doing that matter to them, and it's contributing to their part of the culture and the plan and the goals. But leadership sets the tone. Leadership sets the example. And so just simple things you can do as leaders, and you can challenge your leadership team, is how the heck are we even showing up? We've been coming in, we've been in business a long time, we've been doing things, and things are working, some things aren't. But why don't you just take a step back for a minute and just get the leadership team off to an offsite somewhere and have a few minutes to talk about it. How are we as leaders showing up to work? Are we positive? Do we have good energy? Are we out and about? Are we visible to people? Are people able to approach us? Are we even approachable? Are people scared of us to be around us? Do they run the other way? Or are people running to us like, hey, great to see you. What, how are things going? And you can be down to earth and you can connect with people on every level. Are you aware of what's going on in the mid-level and in the lower levels of the company and the challenges and the frustrations? Because 95% of the time, Joel, discussions happen at the leadership level and the boardroom level, and it gets another layer below and it gets watered down. It gets another layer below, it gets watered down. And by the time it gets to the frontline employee, they are not getting the full message at the same level of intensity, the level of intent, the passion behind it, all of the things that the leader is trying to do, it gets watered down. And so leaders have to be engaged in different aspects of the company to make sure that all those things that they are passionate, that the people at the frontline levels are just as passionate about it as the leader is.
Yeah.
And is wanting those ideas and, wanting innovation and wanting, engagement and just excited to empower these people to do it. But a lot of times it just, the message just changes, and people are doing what they're told to do. They're not doing things for all the other reasons that surround that are originally intended. And I've seen that in play many, many times. Leaders also have to be intentional about asking the question, what needs to happen for you at the mid-level, at the manager level, or at the frontline level? What needs to happen for you to be your best, for you to contribute, for you to be effective, for you to be able to do things in a 4-day week so we can work 4 days a week? What needs to happen for you to be successful, to meet the goals and objectives and everybody win? What needs to happen for you to do that? And leadership sometimes gets busy. Leadership sometimes it isn't visible enough for people to see what's going on and really get ground truth from the leaders. They're not communicating to everybody enough. There are leadership challenges that prevent people from really gravitating, because at the end of the day, people want to be inspired. They want to be motivated. They're excited about what's around the corner and where the company's going and how well we're doing. And everybody wants to win. Nobody signs up to play on a sports team. Hey, put me on the crappiest team possible. I can't wait to be on the losing team this year. No, nobody wants to lose. Everybody wants to win, and it's the leader's job to create the winning culture.
Yeah. So, man, if you're listening and you're like, man, the culture at my company, or or the place that I, have leadership over, it's not great. I feel like the one message that we have for you, Jason and I, is that the place to start is with yourself. There's going to always be things that you can't control over. You can't control people. You can't change other people, but you can control yourself and you can change yourself. And if there is a cultural issue at your company, in your department that you're over, then just know that it can be changed. It can be changed by you changing. It can be changed by you maybe revamping or even just recovering, going back to the basics of who you are as a company, what you're about, how you're supposed to be doing it, your processes, and then asking yourself if the people underneath you, the people that you're responsible for, are accurately cared for. If you're communicating with them what they are actually worth, if you're bolstering them up to be able to go out and succeed in the best place that they have the ability to, if they have enough pay, if they have the right benefits. Ultimately, it comes down to your leadership, your ownership of your position as the frontline leader of your company. What are some... I'm interested to know, Jason, like in your experience as a coach, what are some just like cool success stories that you've seen with men, with women taking hold of these principles and turning their culture around at their company?
Well, I'm going to answer that by starting off giving people some signs to look for. If you think you could have a culture issue, if you think you may be stale or you're not moving forward or keeping up with the times or whatever, and you want to do some introspect on your culture, there's some things to look at. One, how hard is it to attract people? So go look at your metrics. How long does it take to, post a position, to get people in, to, interview people and onboard them? And, how long does that take? I know companies out there, it takes them 3 to 4 months to hire somebody. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. My goodness.
Who in the world is attracted to that? What kind of message does that send? So how long does it take to bring people in? If it's 4 months, and the according to the Society for Human Resources Management, typically it's about 45 days. Maybe up to 60 at the most, depending on
like the average for
the average. So look at your ability to attract people and get them in once you find them. Another thing to be looking at is how hard is it? How hard are we having to work to pull people into the front door? Because other companies have a line of people at the door that want to work for them. Why do you not have a line of people there? What is it about your company that people may or may not like or may not understand? It could be you've got a great culture, but people don't know about it because, nobody's talking about it. Nobody's putting stuff out on social media. Nobody's educated and informed on what, who you are, what you do, and whether that's even a fit for me. And so you've got to be engaged to put that out there and tell people about it. Mm-hmm. Another thing you can look at is your retention rate. How many times a month are people walking out the door? Yeah. What's the duration of time people are working for you? If it's 6 months, 8 months, 15 months, what? If the numbers aren't what you think are ideal for you, or outside of the norm, and you're not retaining people at a reasonable level, you've got a culture problem. Okay. Another thing you can look at is complaints.
Yeah. How
many people are complaining this year compared to last year? How many people are complaining about leadership or lack of leadership? Another thing you can look at is exit interviews. People leave. If you're not doing exit interviews, I highly encourage you to do that because you can get a lot of really good information out of that. If your HR employees are sitting down and talking about the transition and making that smooth for somebody and why they're actually leaving, that will tell you some cultural issues. You can also look at some things like sick leave. What is your sick leave utilization? If a lot of people in your company are maxed every day, they earn a few days, they take a few days. If they're always, taking them all the time, that's a sign that they're not the sickest people in the world. No, it's a sign they're just trying to get out of work as much as possible. They don't like something about the workplace, et cetera. So those are, there's many other things you can look at to kind of measure that. Those are some of the more common ones. I would say start with that. And depending on, what the data is showing you, you can start to get a feel of whether we may have a challenge here or not.
Yeah. Man, and ultimately what this teaches me is that your culture, one, is so ridiculously important. It's worth being intentional about. But then also ultimately, in a positive light, it's changeable. It's something that you have control over. Whether that's, again, redefining who you are as a company, rediscovering who you are as a company, or just putting some very practical, humble, which we've talked about a lot before, humble introspection work in to see where you're at as a leader, where your company is at with their workforce.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, Mr. Jason. Is there anything else that you would want to tell our awesome audience about just the importance of their work culture and just some ways that they can improve it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very simple. As a leader, your best friend is simplicity. I'm going to boil this down to very simple terms. Your company is either disrupting or you're being disrupted. And that can mean, breakthroughs in products and services. That can mean people and hiring and firing. That can be a lot of different things. And so ask yourself, are we disrupting or are we being disrupted? If you're on the disrupted side and you're reactive and you are feeling some pain and what have you, those, again, are signs you need some help. You need a different plan. You need to be more informed on the broader aspects of the culture and what it takes to run a successful, thriving business going forward. You can reach out to folks on this podcast. You can reach out to me. There's, find help from experts that know how to crack the code so you don't have to sit there in pain and suffering and lose sleep every night worrying about how to figure all this stuff out. There are answers. There's a multitude of options out there in this, wonderful world we live in. You just need to, get familiar with the options. You need to get familiar with what may work best for you and how to set that up and redefine that going forward so you can be as successful as possible.
Man, amen to that, brother. Well, thank you, everybody, so much for listening to this episode of Soar Higher with Jason Ballard. You can find all our social links to all of our channels in the show notes. Please check those out, like and subscribe. We're always looking for new ways to interact with our listeners, so please reach out on any of those channels. We want to know what you want us to talk about, and we want to be able to cover the things that are happening down nitty-gritty in the workforce today. If you're interested in learning more about Jason and his work as a business and executive coach, please visit soarhighercoaching.com. That is soarhighercoaching.com. Join us again next week as we provide more insight on how to overcome the latest business and career challenges people are facing in the workforce today. We will see you next week.